A journey of faith, love, and divine blessings. The story of Ruth is one of the most beautiful and inspiring narratives in the Bible. It is a story of love, loyalty, faith, and divine providence. Ruth, a simple Moabite woman, became an essential part of God's redemptive plan, ultimately becoming the great-grandmother of King David and an ancestor of Jesus Christ. This story teaches us that when we trust in the Lord and show love, kindness, and respect, He blesses us abundantly and uses us for His greater purpose. The story begins in the time of the Judges when Israel was experiencing instability and famine. A man named Elimelech from Bethlehem, along with his wife Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, moved to Moab to escape the famine. Moab was a foreign land with different customs and beliefs, and Israelites generally avoided associating with Moabites. However, in desperation, Elimelech took his family there for survival. Tragedy struck when Elimelech died, leaving Naomi as a widow with her two sons. The sons later married Moabite women Ruth and Orpah. However, after about 10 years, both sons died as well, leaving Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah as widows. Widowhood in ancient times was extremely challenging, as women depended on men for security and provision. Naomi, heartbroken and grieving, decided to return to Bethlehem after hearing that the Lord had blessed Israel with food again. As Naomi prepared to return home, she urged Ruth and Orpah to stay in Moab and remarry. Orpah, though saddened, eventually chose to return to her people. However, Ruth refused to leave Naomi. Her response is one of the most touching declarations of love and loyalty in the Bible. "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." This statement that showed Ruth's deep love for Naomi and her willingness to leave behind her homeland, culture, and gods to follow the God of Israel. She demonstrated faith in a God she barely knew but trusted because of Naomi's influence. Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Naomi was still grieving, feeling that God had dealt bitterly with her, even telling the people to call her Mara instead of Naomi. Since they had no male provider, Ruth took the initiative to provide for Naomi. She went to glean in the fields, gathering leftover grain for food. By divine providence, she ended up in the field of Boaz, a wealthy and kind man who was a relative of Elimelech. Boaz noticed Ruth and was impressed by her hard work and devotion to Naomi. He inquired about her and learned of her faithfulness. He showed kindness by ensuring her safety, allowing her to glean freely, and even providing her with food and water. When Ruth returned home and told Naomi about Boaz, Naomi was overjoyed. She realized that Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, a relative who had the right to marry Ruth and restore Elimelech's lineage. Naomi devised a plan for Ruth to seek Boaz's protection. According to Israelite customs, a widow could request a kinsman redeemer to marry her. Following Naomi's instructions, Ruth went to Boaz at night while he was sleeping at the threshing floor. She uncovered his feet and lay there, symbolizing a request for him to redeem her. Boaz was deeply moved by Ruth's request, praising her for choosing him over younger men. However, he mentioned that there was another relative with a closer right to redeem her. He promised to settle the matter the next day. Boaz met with the other relative and presented the case. When the man realized that redeeming Ruth also meant marrying her and preserving Elimelech's lineage, he declined. Boaz then publicly declared his intention to marry Ruth, and the elders blessed their union. Boaz and Ruth were married, and God blessed them with a son named Obed. Naomi's sorrow turned to joy as she held her grandson, who would continue the family line. The women of Bethlehem rejoiced, recognizing God's hand in Naomi's life. Obed became the father of Jesse, who was the father of King David. This made Ruth a direct ancestor of Israel's greatest king, and eventually Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Ruth's story teaches us that God's blessings are not limited by nationality, background, or status. He takes simple, faithful individuals and weaves them into His grand plan. Ruth, a foreign widow, became a key figure in the lineage of Christ because of her faith, love, and obedience. Key lessons from Ruth. 1. Loyalty and love. Ruth's unwavering devotion to Naomi teaches us about selfless love and faithfulness. 2. Faith in God. Even when circumstances seemed hopeless, Ruth trusted in the God of Israel. 3. Hard work and integrity. Ruth's diligence in the fields and her moral integrity earned her respect and favor. 4. God's providence. Ruth's journey from a destitute widow to a blessed wife and mother shows how God orchestrates events for our good. 5. Blessings through obedience. Ruth's obedience and faith led to her being blessed beyond measure, becoming part of God's redemptive plan for humanity. 6. God uses the humble. Despite being an outsider, Ruth became a central figure in God's plan. The book of Ruth is a beautiful testimony of how God blesses those who trust in Him. It reminds us that He can use anyone for His divine purposes, turning sorrow into joy and loss into redemption. May this story encourage us to remain faithful, love deeply, and trust in God's perfect plan for our lives.